Last week, I seemed uncharacteristically positive about how my writing is going, and I'm pleased to say that this week I have reverted to my usual form of it not really going very well. It is true that I was quite pleased with how things were going, and that week does count. All the things I felt in that week, the process I had made in that week, it all does check off on the list. It's just that this week has been more normal, by which I mean that it's been how should I put it? More the usual thing of writing where you're just sort of tearing your hair out and not making much progress. You do move, but you mostly move in circles. I've done some more outlining for this latest draft, mainly to check with myself that it is working and that this new path I'm going down is going to lead somewhere. And as a result, I've had to do a lot of new things. I've had to come up with new plot points and just new scenes and work out an entirely new way of telling this story. Not that that's a problem, because that is what the process involves, and I am telling myself that it becomes much easier if I can learn to love it. Although I've been doing so much outlining that I've sort of gone down that rabbit hole of becoming kind of obsessed with the outlining to the point that I forget I am supposed to be writing something here. That I do have a story in progress that I've sort of left on the shelf. And it is good to outline, but there does come a point where you just have to get on with the writing and actually write it. But the problem was, I would do so much outlining, and I think the reason for that is because it was much easier to think about, because it didn't have to be set in stone. It didn't have to be real. I could write a few pages of ideas for, and then this happens, and this happens, and this happens. And that was only hypothetical. It's stuff that's in the future, so I can change it, even though I can change what I've already written and what I'm writing now. But I think about it differently, because one is like in bullet points and it's not part of the manuscript. The other stuff is, it feels more fixed, even though it's not. It feels like it is. And when I would approach the manuscript to write some more, I ended up resisting, and I would just go back to the outlining because it feels safer. Like with outlining, nothing is of consequence. You know, if I write several pages of prose and I decide it needs to change, that's a lot of work. If I write several pages of outlining and I realise it needs to change, I can just start a different outline document. And psychologically, it feels like a completely different craft. Because it is. Writing prose is a completely different craft to writing an outline of what you might write in the story and how the story might go. But it's all just hypothetical stuff. So there are question marks at the end of multiple sentences and things. And I'm also coming up with various different possible ways of doing a particular part of the scene. But I would do that because it's inconsequential, so it only has potential value. It doesn't actually feel like I'm putting a lot of time into it. So that sort of became a crux that I would lean on. That sort of became my laurel for resting, that I could just do the outlining and tell myself this is a part of the process, which it is, and that because of that, I was doing some work and it was all ultimately going towards what I want to do, which it is. But none of it more than the actual writing, which I wasn't doing. And I knew I wasn't doing it. And I knew that I was doing so much outlining because it was a way to convince myself that I was doing what I needed to be doing, even though it was not actually going to make my manuscript longer. It was not going to do the writing for me. in a way, I sort of became obsessed with planning, so I didn't have to commit to starting, which is common among writers, I think. And as I became aware of that, eventually it gnawed at me enough for me to finally accept that I need to address it. That's sort of what happens when you're a writer and you end up prevaricating. You know that you're doing it, but it becomes easy to do it. But eventually the part of you that actually wants to get it done, eventually, if it just taps away for long enough, eventually it will wear you down. Which is a good thing, because it means then I am finally addressing the issue. And I decided to just take a step back and think, okay, why am I so obsessed with doing the outlining for a story where I pretty much have everything already sorted out? It's just this new beginning and a few details of the third act. Most of the middle act is the same though. Why am I so obsessed with that when I know this probably works? Why am I not actually wanting to write the story that I say I'm so passionate about writing? And I think a big part of it is because I was maybe scared of doing that, because it felt so big and it felt like it was a lot of work, and it just, as a concept, felt so large that I couldn't see the edges. And outlining made it feel small and controllable, and like there was some basic structure. So I then had to ask myself, okay, why though? Why am I feeling that way? Because I've already done so much writing that I know I clearly can do it. So what is the reason that I don't want to? Why am I still having this problem after all this time? I should have got over these problems after all this time. It shouldn't be the sort of problem I'm having by now. Maybe this is just the way being a writer is. Maybe this is just something that as a writer you have to learn to live with. I think that's possible. I think another part of it is the fact that I've done this so many times, and I'm starting to realize the more work I do for this, the more work there is to do. Like, sort of building a sand castle, the bigger it becomes, the more of it can be knocked down. And eventually it does start to feel like it's self-defeating. And I've been considering recently whether or not it's because I'm not allowing myself to write in moderation, that like I don't end up getting drunk on my own story, that I tell myself it's okay to decide I have done enough writing for today. I've got to a certain place. I've checked at least one thing off the list. Now I can stop. Maybe what I'm struggling with is burnout. Burnout is common for writers. The issue being that you write so much, but after that amount of time, there's still so much more to do. You maybe spend a few days really blitzing it, but it's still maybe 1% of the total story. That's not a good way to write. And as a student, one of the things that I thought I was quite good at was being able to pace myself and moderate how much work I did so that it didn't go on top of me. And yet now, as a writer, I'm telling myself, this is important. This is the priority. This is what I say I'm doing. I need to be doing it. If I decide to stop writing now, when I could keep writing for at least another hour, that's 1 hour further away from finishing the book that I would be. And if I want to take myself seriously as a writer, and if I want to be a real writer, then I need to just get on with the writing. But of course, the thing is, that's not how it works. And I think what I have essentially ended up doing is not giving myself permission to stop and to say, this is enough for today. I've made good progress. Let's not time myself out here. Let's just finish this up for today, and then tomorrow, if I start writing at the same time, and I write for about the same amount of time as I have today, then I will be the same distance ahead tomorrow as I am today from yesterday. I think that's the problem. That I really can't switch off, and I keep thinking about this story so much, and it's something that I'm really living with, which is a good thing. It's a good thing. You need to be passionate about it. But I think the issue is here that I am just getting in way over my head, and I'm trying to get the book finished as soon as possible, which is not the way to write. It's just, I tell people that I'm writing a book, people I know in my life, and they're interested, they're excited, they want to read it, and I appreciate the enthusiasm, and it's very motivating. But the problem is, when you have people, whenever they see you, asking, how's the writing going? All I'm really thinking about is when I can tell them that it's finished and that they can read it. And I've got to stop thinking about that. I have to just think, okay, what do I want to write today? What do I want to get done in my story today? You know? It's kind of like running a business in a way. You have to sort of set goals and set like roadmaps and stuff and decide this is what my objective is for today and for this week and for this month. But I'm just not very good at that. I'm not one of those people who has like, what are they called? Commonplace books where you can like draw actual timetables and calendars and things and you can use planners. I've never been one of those students. I never have been. My handwriting is very messy because I'm the only person who needs to read it most of the time. I don't have like color-coded sticky notes and highlighters and things. And I know there are so many YouTubers who make videos explaining how to do that and how it could help you and why you need to do this. I don't have that kind of brain, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. You know? It's kind of like, if I were a musician, which I'm not, I'm tone deaf. I wouldn't be wasting my life as a writer if I could play any musical instrument. But if I were a musician, I know that really the kind of music people want to listen to that's going to sell albums and stuff is like pop music, maybe mainly K-pop, but I can't make K-pop because I'm not Korean, that kind of thing. But what if instead I prefer like evensong? What if I prefer like choir music and celestial harmonies, that kind of thing? I just don't have the brain for pop music. This is the kind of brain I have where I want to make this kind of music. You know, it's not something you can just choose to do. That's where I am with this. I can't just choose to have that very neat and organized mind that can be very good at sort of planning and structuring my day and that kind of thing. And if I did, maybe that would be a massive advantage to me. But there's a reason I don't work in management. I'm the only person who's involved in any of this. And to be honest, even if I did have that kind of really sort of, I don't want to say anal, but like that sort of brain for planning and coming up with schedules and goals and things, I wouldn't even know where to start with applying that to writing a book, because I've never written a book before. I just do whatever I can think of. And that's where I am right now, where I don't really know what the solution is, even if I wanted to. I am going to try a few things out. Maybe it's less about what I get done and how much I get done. Maybe that's it. Maybe I don't need to set like goals for each day. Maybe I just need to write for a certain amount of time. Maybe I just need to set a certain amount of time. Set a time to start writing and set a time to stop writing. And don't write outside those hours or for any more than those hours. Maybe that's just the way I need to do it, to just make sure that I'm getting the same amount written each day, so that way I can make sure I'm getting something written each day, and at the end of each day it's like another carriage on the train. It's the same size with the same number of seats, that kind of thing. I don't know why, but I tend to use a lot of construction analogies, even though I don't work in construction. But that's what my sort of thing is going to be over this next week. Thinking of writing like that. Just setting a time to start writing and a time to stop writing. And if I have some free time in the day, but it's several hours before I'm supposed to start writing, maybe don't start writing. Maybe allow myself to use that free time for something else. But then to make sure that I start writing at the time I have told myself that I'm going to start writing. It's all about principle and discipline. It doesn't have to be all day. Maybe it can only be for 2 or 3 hours. I think maybe 2.5 is a good amount. 2.5 is usually the amount I can go for before I start to just really get strained. You know? I mean, sometimes I'll use like Sims analogies. There's only so long that they can do a certain thing for. There's only so long they can write for before they get burnt out. I need to remember that for myself. It's like lifting weights. If you do it too much, you won't want to do it much. If you do it too much, you won't want to do it much. That's quite a good way of putting it, actually. That's where my head is right now. Just do the same amount each day. Same amount each day. So that then it's easy to get that amount written per day. And that way, I'll be able to know that I'm on track with whatever it is I'm doing. And it won't feel like a huge task ahead of me. And that way, when people ask me, so how's the writing going? Is it nearly done yet? I can say to them, well, I'm getting the same amount of writing done each day, which is the only path to success, I think. And hopefully this will pay off, and hopefully next week I'll be able to say that it works and that it's a great system and that it's what I'm going to keep doing. And I am going to make videos responding to the user submitted prompts I got. I'm not doing those every single week, only when I don't really have anything else interesting to talk about. That might be next week. I don't know. But I'm already feeling more confident about my writing, having talked myself through this and having helped myself justify why I don't need to be doing it so much at once. I think having given myself a little pep talk, I've been able to just sort of maybe calm down and understand no one's going to be mad at me if I'm not writing for 8 hours a day.